All right, y'all. We're gonna jump right into it because we got a lot to cover today. So, just a couple of quick announcements. We have a midpoint feedback form for you guys to fill out if you can. So we're gonna be giving you guys extra credit if you fill it out. Um, and the way you get the extra credit is if you take a screenshot of like the email that you get after filling out the form. You could screenshot that email and send it or submit it to like a CMS grade thing. It's on CMS. You'll see like under CMS like some submission, and that submission is going to be like a screenshot of the email that you get after filling out this form, so that we know that you submitted it, but we don't know which form you submitted, so we don't know your answers. That's so that this form could be anonymous. And so you could tell me or Justin anything about how you think about the course, any feedback that you guys have for the course, how the pace is going, whether we're going too fast or too slow, how the workload is, and stuff like that, so we could get a better idea of how you guys are liking the course. So yeah, please fill that out as soon as you can. And again, it's not required, but you guys, or for those who fill it out, they will get extra credit. And we'll also be making a post about this in case you weren't here today for lecture. But yeah. Oh, and if you have any questions about any of the past projects, like feel free to come up after lecture as always. But yeah. So today we're gonna be talking about table views. Justin went over it on Monday, I believe. Yeah, so today we're actually going to be implementing them. And if you couldn't tell by the sign, please refresh the lecture demo page and download this L6 starter code. It should be 3 MB large. So if it's like 64 kilobytes, that means you're on the wrong page. Instead, it should, instead it should be 3 MB. So please download this. So let me actually download it now and go through the demo. So, oops. Don't mind this. It should be L6 starter. Like it should look like this when you go into your downloads. So if you just go to like click Finder and then go to downloads, you'll be able to see this L6 starter stuff. And let's just open it. So you could open it by doing that. And make sure to trust and open. Yeah, it's recording. I'm pretty sure. Let me double check actually. Oops. Okay. I am recording. Okay. So this is the code. It's a lot of starter code, so let's just run through it a bit. So here in your view controller, this is where we're going to be implementing the table view. But for now, all we have are some contacts and an array of contacts. We create the array of contacts here, and it's of type contact. And to give you some context, here is the view that we want to implement eventually. It's going to be like a list of contacts, list of pictures, list of names. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be setting up the cells and we're going to be setting up the table view. But first, we want to set up the table view. But before any of that, we want to first talk about what a contact is. So this contact object here is here in this folder. And the contact object has a contact picture name, which is the name of the picture in the assets folder. So if you look in assets, you'll see that you already have like some pictures here of the members of iOS. And like the names are like Jennifer, Justin, Reed, Richie. And so this text here, the name here, is associated with like this contact pic name. So we're gonna be using this contact pic name to get that picture. And you'll see what this means later on. And then the name is like the actual name that is associated with that contact. So for example, here, like the Alden is lamp, like this text lamp is this text name. So if you know Alden's name is not in fact lamp, but we're gonna be going through this section. We're gonna try to like change that. We're gonna try to change all the names here because all the names are wrong right now. Like that is not me. But yeah. So yeah, this is just the contact. Any questions so far? Or any issues with downloading the project? Are we good? Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, my fault. Is that good? That's okay. Let me make sure. Okay, that changed everything. Cool. So yeah, this is the view that we're gonna be implementing. And just to go back to view controller, so we have like, we created all instances of like a contact here. So we have like we have 8 contacts, and we create a contacts array that contains all the contacts that we created. And eventually we're gonna have to like initialize the table view. We're gonna have to set up the constraints of the table view, and we're gonna do all this other stuff later. So that's our view controller. And what we're also going to implement is this detail view controller. So what this detail view controller is that when I tap one of the cells of the contacts, I want to eventually be able to change this name. So like that's Justin. His name's not Shungo, but eventually we're gonna be changing that name to be Justin. We're gonna be fixing the name. So when I tap on the cell, it says Shungo initially, but because this is a input text view, we'll be able to change this name to Justin, and then we'll be able to press this little submit button here and push those changes that we made on this view to the cell. So we're basically going to be delegating from this view to the cell that is in our contacts list, like this cell. So we're going to be passing information from this present view controller onto one of these cells. We're not going to be doing that until like a little bit later, but just so you guys know exactly what we're doing. And yeah. And so that view controller that you just saw here, this detail view controller, is associated with this detail view controller. So in here we have a UI image view, we have a UI text field, and we have the UI button here at the bottom. And the way we set it up is we instantiate those 3 things here, we create them. And we also have this contact variable here. So this contact is going to be the contact relative to the cell that we tapped on. So when we tapped on one of these cells, we're also going to be passing in some contact. Spoiler alert. So we're going to be passing in some contact, and with that contact, we're going to populate this view, because we need this view to be relative to whatever cell I tapped on, right? Because the view is going to change every time I tap on a different cell, right? So I need that contact information in order to present the right stuff. So that's what this contact variable is going to be doing here. And we even have an initializer for our detail view controller. So this initializer is going to require us to take in some contact when we create a detail view controller. So what I'm saying here is that like this contact, like my contact here on line 18, this contact is going to equal whatever contact I take in when I create a detail view controller. And so here I have all my stuff set up. I have my pick image view set up. I have my name text field set up, my submit button, and I have my setup constraints. So these are all the constraints for my image, my name text field, and my button. So this is all stuff that you guys are a little familiar with. So nothing crazy. It's just 3 things. And we also have this required init here at the bottom, because like for every initializer that we create in a class, we always have to have like this required init. And it's typically standard to put at the bottom, since it's like it's unimportant. So we put at the bottom. But yeah, so that's a detail view controller. And the scene delegate is just the same as how it's always been. We create a window scene. We set the root view controller of that window scene to be a UI navigation controller. And that is so that we could actually like push this view. So present this view. So the only reason this present view stuff actually works is because we set the root view controller to be a UI navigation controller. And we set the root view controller to be this view controller that we have here, this view controller. And so that's the gist of everything. So let's actually get into creating stuff. Anybody got any questions on the overview? You good? All right, so let's type some code. So besides this variable contacts that we want to make that holds like the array of contacts, we also want to create the actual table view, right? So how do we do that? It's very similar to most things what we've been doing. Let's call this table view like contact table view. UITableView. It's going to be a object of UITableView, right? It's going to be a UITableView. And so now that we have this, we have to initialize the table view, right? So the first thing that we should always do, contact table view, is translate auto resize message to false. And I think for now, table view. Yeah, for now, this is basically all we want to be doing. So now let's just add this as a subview. U.add subview. Oops. All right. And let's set up the constraints for this table view. So what we want this table view to look like, oops, not that one. It's something like this, where it's like, it basically tapes up the entire screen. So that's what we're going to be writing. So we're going to be saying on table view, top anchor constraint. It's going to be equal to the views safe area layout guide top anchor. Top anchor. And the trailing anchor, or I mean the bottom anchor. Ooh, I just made a huge mistake. My fault. We always have to do the NS layout constraint activate activate constraints. Just leave this stuff in the middle, and let me copy and paste this stuff in here. So let me just slow down a bit. My fault. That was my mistake. Yeah, I'll fix that in a second. So contact table the bottom anchor. We're gonna set the bottom anchor equal to the views safe area layout guide bottom anchor. So let's do that. Dot constraint equal to view dot safe area layout guide. Okay. And let's set the leading and trailing to be equal to the views leading and trailing anchor. Leading anchor dot constraint. Okay, so those are our constraints. We're going to be setting the contact table views top anchor to be equal to the top. We're going to have it go all the way down to the bottom, and it's going to be spread across the left and right side of the screen. So just to make sure that this actually appears on the screen, let me change the background color to be blue. Oh wait, whoops. Background color. Blue. All right. Now let's run it. Let's see what this does. Oh, my simulator is huge. No worries. And there it is. That's our table view. So as expected, it expands throughout the entire screen. But as you could tell, like this doesn't really do much. It doesn't have like anything right now. It doesn't have any cells. It's just the background view for this table view. So what we actually want to do is register some cells with this table view. And how do we do that? So oops. What we're gonna actually do is we're gonna do something like contact table view dot register nib for cell reuse identifier. And this nib is going to be it's going to be another file that we create. And the reuse identifier, let's just make that right now, actually, just so we don't forget. So the reuse identifier is used to present new cells onto the screen. So if you recall from Justin's lecture, I hope you went over this. Every time a cell disappears, it's dequeued from like from the visible cells. So like when I swipe up on this view, Alden disappears. Alden no longer exists. Like he doesn't exist, but that cell still does. And because we don't like wasting things in iOS, we recycle that cell that contained Alden. So that's like that cell that contains Alden is going to be used all the way here at the bottom when I scroll up and present new cells. And that way I'm not making like 100 cells for like 100 different contacts, because that'd be very inefficient and Apple wouldn't let you download apps that take up that much space anyway. So we're always going to be presenting like at max like 6 and like 5.5 like cells. And so like when a cell, like we could have like 1,000 contacts, right? But we're only going to be presenting like 6 cells at once. So when Alden leaves the screen, that cell is not going to be used at the bottom. And that way we only have like 6 cells presented. But the way like we know which cell to actually use is by using a cell reuse identifier. So we're going to create a string. So let's call this like reuse identifier. Let's say contact reuse identity. And that way we could pass this into here. So this after the 4-cell reuse identifier, we're going to include this reuse identifier. But now the other issue is what goes into this other parameter here. So what goes into this parameter is like the nib file that declares what the cell actually looks like. So we don't actually have any files that say what the cell is right now. So let's actually create that right now. So we're gonna go ignore the error for now. If you're really bothered about the error, just like do that, and the error goes away. So, but what we're gonna be doing right now is we're gonna be creating a new file. So go to File, New. We're gonna create a new file. Yeah. Make sure it's a Cocoa Touch class. We'll go to Next. And if it's not already a TableView cell, make it so that it is a UITableView cell. And we're gonna call this contact TableView cell. So let's go ahead and do that. Make sure it's not a zip file and it's Swift. We're gonna create this. And so now we have our cell for our TableView. But just so you guys could see, this is what one cell looks like. So you could think of this. Oh wow, this sucks. Why is it like so small? Okay, there we go. So okay, the subclass is UITableView cell. Yeah. Anybody else have any questions? Or are we all up to like this part? Okay, cool. So this is the one cell that we're looking at. You could think of this as its own view. We're going to be constraining things relative to the size of this one cell. So just to give you a picture of what we're going to be dealing with here, that's the cell that we're talking about. So there are two things we're going to need here. We're going to need a UI image to hold the contact image, and a UI label to hold the name of that contact. Right? So let's make those two things. Let's say let UI contact image view, UI image view, and let label. And sorry, I forgot to tell you guys this earlier, but we will not actually be using this function here. So I'll just leave it. Instead, we're going to create an initializer function. So to initialize this cell, all we got to do is type init. And that first thing that pops up, style with a reuse identifier, is what we're going to be calling. So just press enter on it. And that's what it should look like for now. And this is where we're going to be actually setting up like our contact image view and contact label stuff. You could think of this as like the view did load on a view controller. So first we have to call a super.init. And this is going to take in the style and the reuse identifier that we have up here. And now we're going to actually set up everything. So contact image view translate auto reset. And then we're going to add this. Oh, actually not to view. We're going to do content view dot add subview. So instead of like doing view dot add subview, we're doing content view dot add subview now, because we're talking about this content view, smaller view. And we're also going to be doing the same thing with contact label. So we're going to do contact label dot translate auto resizing false contact label. And that's basically actually we don't need that much more. Content view dot add subview. And then we want to set up constraints, right? As normal. So we'll create a function. So that's the function that we're going to be making to set up the constraints. But before I do that, I want to take care of this error that is being yelled at me right now. It's saying, I clicked on the error. It's saying some required initializer is necessary. So I'm going to give it what it wants. I'm going to say fix. And there we go. That's the initializer. I'm gonna just move this. You don't have to do this, but I'm gonna just move this down here because, like I said, it's kind of unnecessary to have. So I don't want to see it. And yeah, that's all the code we have so far. You want to start
Where do you get equal to false?
here? So basically, if I don't set this equal to false, this contact label and this contact image view won't actually appear on the screen. So I need to declare these properties of these different objects to be false in order for them to actually be on the screen. What do you say?
Anyways, programmatic layout, I think, and if you're going to use constraints, you can't use whatever Apple default, right? And so the way you can say, I don't want to use your default one, I want to use my constraints.
So translate auto resizing masking constraints is a way to say, you know, we're the ones that are going to be saying where this thing is in the code, not anywhere else. It's going to be in the code. In fact, I'm going to be typing out where it's supposed to go right now. So in setup constraints, I start off with the NS layout constraint to activate. And here's where we're actually going to be writing like the constraints. So let's set up this contact image view. So I want this contact image view to have a leading anchor equal to the content views leading anchor, because I want it to be at the very left of the content view. So I'm going to say that leading anchor dot constraint content view dot leading anchor. And the thing about this content view that you guys should know about is that the content view, it will change size depending on the constraints that we put on the stuff that's inside it. So what I mean by that is like the content view is going to try to fit everything that I put in it. So what I should be doing is setting like the top anchor of like this image view equal to the top anchor of the cell. In that way, like the cell and the top anchor of the cell and the image are both the same. And so like the cell is forced to make sure that that image's top anchor is constrained to top anchor. And I do the same thing to the bottom anchor of the image. So I set the image's bottom anchor to be equal to the content view's bottom anchor. In that way, like the content view is forced to match those constraints, and it's forced to fit that image and the text that's going to be in it. So I'll type out what I just said. I'm going to set the content. Well, first I got to define a width and height to this image, right? So I'm going to say contact image view dot height anchor dot constraint is equal to, let's say equal to view dot width anchor. Oh, not view, content view dot width anchor with a multiplier of 3. So what I'm saying here is that the height of this image view is going to be equal to a third of the actual content view's width. So it's going to be a third of this width. And I'm going to say the same thing for the height. I just copy and I'm going to say the same thing for the width of the image. So I just copy and pasted what I just had, and I changed the text to be width instead of height here. And it should be the same like parameters here. So I have the height anchor, I have the width anchor, and I have the leading anchor. So now all that's left for me to do is make sure that this content view is constrained to the top and bottom of this image view. So I'm going to say contact image view. Constraint. Oops. Is equal to content vector. So this way, I know that this content view, by setting these two parameters here, or by setting these two constraints here, I know that this content view is going to have to fit my contact image view because it has to be constrained to the top and bottom. Yeah, what's up? Yeah, so the reason I said height, or the reason I say width for both of these is because so if I were to say the height of the cell, it could be different than the width, right? And I want this image to be a square. So what I'm saying here is that whatever the width, I know that the content view's width will always be the size of the width of the screen, right? Because that's what I said the table view to be. The table view is going to be set to the width, and so the content view is going to have a width set to be the size of the screen. And so I'm guesstimating that this image here is about a third of the screen width. And so because I want to make sure it's a square image, I set the width anchor to also be the same as the height anchor in size. So that's why I say content view dot width here with the multiplier of 0.3. Yeah, there's probably other ways to do this. I just did it like this because I just had to copy and paste the code, so it wasn't a big deal. But yeah. And so now we have all the constraints for the contact image view done. So now let's set up the constraints for the label. So ns layout constraint activate. We'll be going through this a little quicker. So luckily for us, we don't really need that many constraints for the label. We just need like 2. We just need this label to be like 5, like, okay, let's say 10 pixels from the trailing end of the image. So let's say like dot leading is equal to constraints. Or actually not content view, contact image view. Trailing with a constant of like. And we also want to make sure it's like, we want to make sure it's in the center of like the content view's Y anchor. Like it's in the middle of the content view. So the way we do that is we say contact label dot constraint. Whoops. I anchor dot constraint to content view. So here I'm basically setting the center Y anchor of the contact label equal to this content view's own Y anchor. And we are almost done. So we're missing, actually, is everybody up to this point? So I'm not running it yet because I know it's not going to do anything if I run. If anything, it might give me errors. So I'm just holding off on running for now. Are we good? Okay, I'm guessing we're good. Cool. So the last thing that we have to do is actually configure this cell. So like I said, for each cell, we need to take in some image and some label, right? So like for example, in this contact image view, in this contact label, I'm not actually giving it a value right now. Like if you guys didn't notice, I didn't set this equal to anything. I didn't say like contact image view dot image is equal to something. Instead, I just kind of didn't tell you guys that. And the reason I didn't say anything about that is because what we want to do now is create a configure function that sets up those things of this cell. So we're gonna actually do that right now. We're gonna create this function configure. And what this configure function is going to do is it's going to take in some contact. So it's going to take in a parameter called contact of type contact. And what we are going to do is we're going to say contact image view dot image is going to equal to UI image named contact dot name and contact what is this? Contact label dot text going to be equal to contact dot. So what I'm saying here in this configure function is that I'm going to be taking in some contact object that, as we know, has some contact pic name and some name. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to create a UI image here that's named like the contact pic name, because I know that this field is going to correspond to the name of like one of these assets. That's how we're going to create this function. So whoops. Okay. Yeah, so that's how I create the UI image. And then I set the text to be whatever that contact name's text is. So that's how we're going to set up our contact table view cell. And now finally, I think I'm not missing anything. Okay, I'm not missing anything. Finally, we could go back to our view controller. And in this commented section on like about line 35, if you're following me, right here, we're going to register our contact table view cell. Oops, what's this thing? Oh yeah, that's all. So we're gonna be registering this cell to be this contact table view cell. So all the cells are gonna have to follow some contact table view cell. It's gonna follow the properties that are made in contact table view cell. And it's gonna have a reuse identifier called reuse identifier. And this is how we're gonna register the cells. This is how we're saying like, hey, this cell is gonna look like this. And it's gonna have these things that I declared in that contact table view cell. And so this is all we have so far. But we're missing a couple more things with the table view. So now what we actually have to say or ask, rather ask is like, how, like what is going to be controlling the information that goes into this table view. And so what we're going to say is we're going to be like contact table view dot data source. It's going to be this cell. And what this line is saying right here, oh, what? No. Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. Perfect. Just type out this line, right? And you'll see that error, right? Please don't say anything. Okay. I'll try building. And oh shoot, I have an error. So there's this error, right? But before I go into the error, what this line is basically saying is like the data source, where the source of my data is going to be coming from is going to be from this entire view controller. From this entire view controller itself is where I'm going to be getting the data to put into my table. And that should be a little, or it's easier to see once you realize that like all our data is in this view controller, right? This is where our data is. And so the source of this data is going to be here. But the reason it's yelling at us is because we're not conforming this view controller to be to the, what is it called? We're not conforming it to a UITableView data source. And we need to do that because what we're going to be saying is like, okay, the functions that actually populate our table view are going to be created inside this view controller. And so in order to make those functions, we have to conform this view controller to that type. And so that's what we're going to be doing here at the bottom. So first we're going to be like extension view controller is a UI table view data source. So this is what we're going to see. It's going to be a UI table view data source. And if I try running, it's going to yell at me again. And that's good because it's going to ask me like, do you want to add protocol subs? And I'm going to be like, yeah, I do. So I'm going to click fix and it's going to add both of these very convoluted functions. So okay. Is everybody up to this point? Are we good here?
I didn't just like this, I didn't just.
So let me do that one more time. So basically, okay, I'm here, right? So I could just wait or I could also just run, but eventually I'm gonna see this like red thing here, right? And it's gonna ask me like, do you want to add protocol subs? And I'm gonna say, yes, I do, fix. For a good majority of errors in Swift or in Xcode, I mean, if you see that fix button, it's a good sign because that means that this error is pretty common. And so it'll tell you exactly what to do. And in this case, it's perfectly right. We do want to add these two functions here. And so you could also type this out yourself. You can probably memorize like the table view stuff and like type this out yourself, but I choose not to. So now we have these two functions. Are you good to this point? So now we have these two functions. And what we want to do is, well, first this function right here, what it's saying is like, hey, I need to know how many number of rows are in this section. And in this case, our section is 1. We don't have to worry about how many sections. We only have 1 section. But how many rows are there is what it's asking me. It's this arrow here is basically saying I have to return some ints. I have to return something of type int. And so I'm going to tell it how many things we need. And how many things we need is equal to the size of like my contacts list, right? Like I don't want to be like, it should be no more, no less, right? I shouldn't be presenting more cells than I have to, and I shouldn't be presenting less cells in the context that I have. So I'm going to basically here be returning contacts dot count. So it's going to give me the count of the contacts. And then in this other function, we're going to be doing a little bit more. What we're going to be saying is something like we're gonna do like, yeah, if let cell equal to BQ, what is this? Contact Wait, hold up a second. Okay, got it. So it should be something like contact table view dot DQ reusable cell, and with the identifier reuse identifier, like the one that we created earlier, for index path, like the one that we have. And we're gonna say that we want to DQ this cell as a contact table view cell. So we want this cell when we're DQing this, if we can DQ the cell, if the cell like goes above the screen and we need one coming up from the bottom, then I'm gonna try to set this cell to be a contact table view cell, like the ones that we made. And if I can do this, then I want to configure the cell. And I'm gonna pass in the contacts at index path. Index. And then I'm gonna be returning that cell. So to kind of go into these lines a bit more, I'm basically saying like, if like I'm asking, yo, can I like DQ some cell that is on the queue of cells that aren't on the screen? Can I use one of them, please? And if I can, then I'll configure it. Remember like this configure function that we made here in if I click this, if I click command, if I do command and then like hover over the function and click on it, I could like jump to definition, which is just saying where I made that function. And I made that function here in my contact table view cell. So I'm using the function that I made for that cell, and I'm returning the cell. However, there's also the case where where I don't have like a cell that I could reuse. So I gotta take care of that. So what I'm going to be doing here instead is returning a UITableView cell. Oh, no, wait. I lied. I'm going to be returning a UITableView cell. Okay. I'm going to be returning a UITableView cell with the parentheses because I'm returning the object. Oh, cool. All right. Yeah, I ran it just to double check. But once you do that, you'll actually be able to see stuff right now, which is pretty cool. And if you notice, like when I scroll up, the background of the table view is like still blue, because that's what I said initially, but the cells are on top of that background color. So if you're like debugging and you're trying to check to see whether your table view is there, if I set it to blue and there's cells there, then it's gonna look weird because right now it looks like it's not blue at all, right? Unless I start scrolling. And that's because the cells appear on top of the table view. Or yeah. So I'm gonna delete this line because I don't really need it anymore and it looks ugly. So this is how our function looks. Is everybody up to here? Do we have the cells now? Everybody got cells? Okay, cool. So we got over like a good, we got over the new stuff basically. So now the question is, how do we like present a new view and how do we delegate information from that new detail view to the specific cell? And this is very similar. I'm just gonna say it up front right now. It's very similar to what you're supposed to be doing in your project. So this is probably the hardest part of the project. I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, we're gonna be doing some delegation. So what we have to do now is basically tell the table view that we want to change some stuff. We're eventually going to tell the table view, hey, I need to change like some of these cells. I need you to change some of these cells. So I'm going to need like a delegate. And we're gonna give this table view a delegate. What the delegate that we're going to be giving this table view is going to be table view delegate. It's going to be this view controller itself. Because what we're saying here is we want this specific view controller to implement the functions that are necessary to change information in the table. Because when we say delegate, we're basically like saying like, yo, like who's going to be changing me, right? The table view is asking who's going to be changing me, and we're saying that it's going to be this view controller. So once you add this line, you'll see that you'll get an error. And same deal as before, we have to like make an extension here at the bottom. So we're gonna say like extension view controller is type UI table view. So now instead of conforming it to UITableView data source, we're gonna be conforming it to UITableView delegate. And so here we're gonna have, here's where we want to add the function of like tapping inside this table view. So I'm gonna do something like touch up, what is it called? Function table view. Okay, it's okay. After typing function table view, it's this did select row function that we want. Because this function is basically saying like, okay, do this when I select some row. And this is what we're gonna be telling it to do. So when we tap on a row, we definitely want to present the detail view controller, right? So we're gonna say present detail view controller animated true. And the contact that we want to be passing through is going to be index. The contacts that we're going to be passing through is this context index path.row stuff. Also, I forgot to mention it before, but basically what this index path.row is saying is it's telling me the index of where I tapped. So if I actually like, okay, you don't have to do this right now, but I'll comment this out for a sec. I'll be like, index path.row. And basically index path.row is just the int. So if you could see it, it's saying like 1, 2, 3. It's that int that's associated with like the row. 7. So that's all it's doing. And so now if I reload it, I now have this information, right? So now I have this, but I want to add a function to this button, and I also want to make sure that this text stuff gets passed through. So let's do that like right now. Let's go into this detail view controller. And basically what we're saying is this detail view controller is going to be changing the information of the cell. So this detail view controller is going to act as like the delegator. And the delegate in this case isn't going to be the view. It's not going to be the view controller. It's going to be that UI table view cell. Because we're not telling the entire table view to change. We're just telling that one cell to change. So what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be firstly, because this is a delegator, it's like, it's like the customer to the chef, and the customer needs a menu, right? So here's where we're going to be creating menu, the protocol. So let's create the protocol. Let's go protocol change contact delegate is of type UI table view cell, because we want a UI table view cell to conform to this protocol. And we wanted to implement a function change name, change contact. Sounds better. The name being a type string, right? And we're only implementing like the parameters of this function and the name of the function. We're not saying what it does, right? And the reason we're not saying what it does is because that's not our job. That's not my job as a customer to tell the chef like how to make the recipe. He should know how to do that. So now that we have the menu, the chef is the one that actually like defines what that recipe is. So in this case, the chef is going to be the contact table view cell. So here at the bottom, we're going to do like extension contact table view cell. Type change contact delegate. And here, once we type all this out, it's gonna give me this error again. It's gonna be like, do you want to add protocol subs? I'm gonna be like, yeah. And here's the function, right? So how do I actually like how do I change this contact name? Well, I'm gonna do like contact label dot text is equal to name. I'm gonna change it to whatever that name string was. Right. Is everybody good up to here? We chilling? All right. Sorry, I'm going a little bit quicker. I just gotta get through. We gotta get through all this. So, okay, I created a delegate in my detail view controller. Something I forgot to do though is to add like that functionality to the button, or not even just add the functionality. Like the submit button's there. It has like a selector function. I just have to actually add like the stuff that corresponds to this selector function. So what I'm gonna do is well, obviously I need to dismiss the view. So dismiss true. But before that, I want to call the delegate function, right? So I'm gonna be like, well, I need to have the delegate first in order to call the delegate function, right? So let me do that right now. So I have this initializer here, right? But I needed a delegate to be passed into this detail view controller as well. Since it's the delegator, every delegator needs its delegate. So I need to do that here. So I need to create a weak bar delegate. And this delegate is going to be of type change contact. And here in my initializer is where I'm actually going to give that delegate some value. So I'm going to say like delegate change contact delegate and be like self.delegate. So this is stuff that we like, normal delegation stuff, nothing crazy. That's gonna be in our initializer function. And what else? So we have the initializer, we have the change contact delegate protocol. I'll just highlight this so you guys can see. And so now we have the power to actually call this delegate function. Now that we created this initializer, I'm gonna go down here a bit. Now here, because I have the delegate, I can just be like delegate dot change contact name. And what's the name that I want to change it to? I want to change it to whatever is in this text field currently. So I'm gonna be like name text field dot text. So I'm gonna be changing the text using the delegate, and I'm gonna dismiss it. So, oh no. Oh yeah, you can just exclamation point that. We're gonna be forcing wrapping it because there's always gonna be some text in there. Whether it's like empty, whether it's just like an empty pair of strings or not, there's always gonna be something in there. So I call the delegate. However, now if I try to run it, let's try to run it, see what happens. I get this error. I'm missing an argument parameter. Like what? And then I realize, oh wait, I forgot that I added a delegate in my initializer. So now I gotta pass in some delegate here. But wait, how am I like what delegate am I talking about here? I can't do self because the delegate is not this view controller. It's like this view controller is not what I'm telling to change. I'm telling that cell to change. So what I need is that cell. And how do I get a cell? So same thing as we did before up here. We are basically going to be we're gonna be doing like the same exact thing, I think. Let me just double check. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We're gonna be doing the same exact thing. Oh wait, no, we're not actually. I lied. My fault. I think it's like let cell is equal to did select. Is there like a did select row at? Oh, cell for row ads. Okay. That's next path as. So I have that cell. And then I want to pass it through. Oh, but it's yelling at me. Please. And okay, cool. So what we're basically saying, what we're promising is that any index path that we pass in will always correspond to some self. This is a dangerous promise to make, but for the purposes of this course, I'm going to be promising that. And so what I'm saying in this line is basically like whatever. So I have the self for index path. I think that's right. Yeah. Okay. So I'm taking the cell at that index path and making it a contact table use cell. And then what I'm doing is I'm passing that cell in as the delegate. So if I have that cell, if that cell is there, and it will be there, I'm going to pass it in as a delegate because that is what I'm trying to that's what I'm trying to change. I'm not trying to change the view controller. I'm trying to change the cell. So now let's see if this actually works. Roberts, your name is not Roberts. If I click submit, should change the name and stuff. And let's go. It changes. Awesome. I'm not gonna lie, I thought I was gonna run through many more errors, but I guess it's a lucky day. There is okay. Is everybody up to this point? Are we good here? Oh, sorry. Sure. So okay. No worries. Anybody else want to go back to any specific part of the code? Yeah. Yeah. The what? The protocol? Yeah. Okay. I'll go to protocol. I guess the protocol as well. Okay. Any other requests? Reals? Okay. So I guess I'll stay here for a bit more and then I'll go to protocol. Okay. Good. Gotcha. And here's the protocol. So just to kind of reiterate what we just did, we created this detail view controller was already here. I made it, I think yesterday. But this detail view controller is going to be the delegator that tells these cells what to change to. So the cells in this case are the delegates. And the reason this part is so difficult is because when we first introduced you to delegation, we did it from screen to screen. But obviously there's like many other ways to like delegate information, right? In this case, we're delegating information from a screen to like just one cell. So it's not like it is a view, but it's not a view controller. You know, it's not an entire view. So the question comes up like, how do we delegate between things that aren't just like screens? How do we delegate between cells? And this is how you delegate between cells. You have like the content in view cell and you pass in the protocol through there. So in this context in view cell, we create an extension of this TableView cell and we conform it to that change contact delegate so that it could implement that function like change contact name. And notice how we didn't call any reload data here. We don't have to call reload data. We just gotta make sure that this is a delegate, add the functions that change that name, and then make sure to call that delegate function here in our change contact cell. So there's one more issue. Okay, is everybody good up to here? We good? Everybody being able to change the names? If you have it running, then you might have noticed that when I change the name, like if I change this name to like Jennifer, click submit, it changes, right? Which is great. But then when I go back on it, it looks like it didn't change. So like what happened? Like that cannot be. I literally changed it. So this has to do with the fact that we changed like the cell, but we didn't change the data associated with that cell. So if we recall, if we go back to the contact of view cell, or actually no, not here. Where is it? Okay, yeah. In this, when we present the detail view controller, we're passing in not just a delegate, but also like the contact, right? And if we look back at the contact, it's a class. It's a class contact, not a struct, but it's a class. And so that means that anytime we create an object, it's some reference type, right? So what the reference type part means is like when I create some object contact, then anytime I create another object that refers to that original contact object that I made, then if I change a property of that other contact object that I made, then it will also change the original copy. So when I create copies of one contact class, all of them refer to the same object. I'm not gonna write on the word because that's annoying. But I'll show you what this means here in our detail view controller. Okay, so in our detail view controller, we have the change contact name, right? Which is cool and all, but that's not the only thing we need to do in order to make sure that this information is changed from that contact object. What we also have to do, luckily, we also have a contact here. We have the contact object here. We pass the reference through it. So now all we have to do is just do like contact dot name is equal to name text field dot text. And so what this does is it makes sure that that contact object, not only does a cell change, but also the contact object associated with that cell. So even though like I created this contact here, right? This is like a new instantiation of a contact, but it takes in the contact that was passed in through it in my initializer. And so when I set this contact to be equal to my contact in this view, like the self.contact, what I'm saying is make sure that this self.contact has the same, it points to the same contact that this one is pointing to. And so now, because I changed this, because I changed this contact name to be like the name text for the text stuff, and make sure to have that exclamation point there so you don't have to do any other weird stuff. Now, when I change a name, tip, it will change the name, and then it will actually keep that name. So I could finally give this guy his actual name. Chief. And I can finally fix all the names. Which I will not do all of them, but that's the majority of them.
And on 66, like it's force and wrapping it, but usually you don't want to force it. This is for the case for the demo purposes. But your assignments, please do not force it.
Okay, yeah. Sorry, I was just speeding through. I mean, okay, if you want to do it the other way, you could do like that, or sorry, I guess. And it'll do the same thing. So Robert, not Robert. And it stays. It's pretty cool.